When we are under consistent spiritual attack, we may find ourselves thinking about our situation and our spiritual attackers like a lot. And let me just say that that is a totally normal response. If this feeling of thinking about your spiritual attacker, thinking about your situation and wondering why is a feeling that resonates with you, I highly encourage you to stick around and join me for this conversation, which I suspect will be very enlightening for everyone watching. Hello, beautiful people. It is Oshun Kimi, your sage, your guru, your mystic, and your spiritual informant. And today I will be revealing 4 things that you need to know about the witch or warlock attacking you. And yes, this information will still be relevant to you, even if I don't personally know you or your situation. So point number 1 is that we very usually have spiritual contracts with the witch or warlock attacking us because they and the spiritual warfare that they bring to us are meant to teach us deep transformative lessons that we could only learn through this particular experience with this particular person. These lessons are meant to teach us both who we are on a soul level, and they are also meant to initiate us into the higher teachings of the universe. It is only through intense spiritual journeys that we are able to achieve our full spiritual power and that we learn to stand on our own 2 feet spiritually. I'm going to come back to this point about soul lessons later. But for now, I'm going to return to what I said earlier about us only being able to learn the lessons that we really need to learn from the particular spiritual attacker that has been assigned to our path. You may be thinking that there's nothing particularly significant about the person or people spiritually attacking you, but there is actually a deep, dare I say, soul level connection between us and the witches and warlocks up against us. And this brings me to the second thing that you need to know about your spiritual attacker, which is that our spiritual attackers are very usually mirrors of us, meaning that we have more similarities than we may admit to ourselves. Usually, if we look very closely and objectively, we'll notice that our spiritual attackers are very usually who we would be if we were fully in our shadow. And this is what I mean about our spiritual attackers being mirrors of us. They are essentially people who are simply shadow or darker versions of who we are on a soul level. So the universe uses these people to show us who we will be if we do not heal, to show us essentially the road that we are on and who we will become if we stay on that particular path. So we meet karmic and shadow versions of ourselves to initiate and propel us into our healing journey. We are meant to see in our attackers all that we wish not to become. What I'm about to say next may very well ruffle the feathers of people who relish in feeling like the victim. But the real spiritual tea is that targets of spiritual attack and perpetrators of spiritual attack are actually on the same energetic frequency, are actually on the same vibration. When we come into contact with our spiritual attackers, we are very usually operating in the exact low vibrational energy required to align ourselves with the timeline of spiritual warfare that we have found ourselves in. Through our own imbalanced choices and behaviors, and very often due to the poor behaviors and choices we inherited from our lineage, we manifest a timeline of spiritual warfare into our reality. So essentially, the timelines that we are in when we are facing spiritual attack is a manifestation of our own choices. And so allow me to go a little bit deeper with this third thing that we need to know about the witch or warlock attacking us, which is that this usually isn't the first lifetime that we've had with our spiritual attackers. Do you know how many people I've read only to discover that they have been carrying on this cycle or this dynamic with their spiritual attacker for multiple lifetimes? And this is very usually because your soul is needing to learn a very crucial lesson. And what this lesson is of course going to depend on the particular person and their soul's journey. It may be a lesson about discernment, a lesson about self-worth, a lesson about self-empowerment, a lesson about karma and balance. Remember what I said in point number 1, that these situations are all about soul growth and learning ourselves on a soul level. One of the main lessons we are intended to learn on this journey of spiritual warfare is about the nature of cause and effect and about the nature of fear. Fear is very usually what leads to us being forced to confront spiritual warfare. This can be fear of our own power, fear of other people's power, fear of the magnitude of the universe, which occurs when we feel overwhelmed by just how deep and eternal the universe is and just how many spirits and entities actually exist within it. Whatever it was we feared the most, this spiritual warfare brought it to our front door. If we feared being seen, now we may experience gang stalking or monitoring spirits. If we feared our own light power, then we end up meeting witches and warlocks who want to steal and siphon that power. And then when we face witches and warlocks who want to siphon our power, then we are essentially put into a position where we have to make a choice about whether we actually want our spiritual power or not. If we want it, we end up having to fight for the very thing we have feared all along. If we feared losing everything because we had a scarcity mindset, or we had a poverty mindset, or we grew up in scarcity or poverty, we may end up actually losing everything so that we learn not to be too attached to the material realm. Go deep within yourself and figure out what your fears and your triggers are, and you will essentially learn the nature and the intent of the spiritual warfare set up against you. So now let's get into the fourth and final thing that you may need to know about the witch or warlock attacking you, which is this. By placing us back into these dynamics lifetime after lifetime, the universe is offering us an opportunity to clear out karmic loops that we have been struggling with for multiple lifetimes. Because we've likely been playing out this dynamic with our attackers for multiple lifetimes, there are literal wounds that we have been carrying over from lifetime to lifetime and also passing on from generation to generation. And so we essentially end up meeting a witch or warlock again and again because we did not face the demons or resolve enough of the issues in a timely manner. To where if we had done the healing work and we had broken the loop before we reached a certain point in our life, chances are we would have been taken out of that timeline and into a higher timeline where we would have been completely inaccessible and essentially invisible to our spiritual attackers. And as we come aware of the karmic loops that have been playing out for multiple generations, the idea is essentially that we deal with it fully. We resolve it fully. We close out fully all the contracts in this lifetime so that as we move on to other lifetimes, and even as we move through this lifetime, we will be able to ascend beyond these witches, these warlocks, and these karmic loops. So let me end this conversation by saying this. We are eternal beings. We've lived many lifetimes. We technically have nothing but time. And I say this to say, be patient with your soul's journey of growth and transformation, but also be very lighthearted. Don't carry around a lot of baggage when it comes to these situations, because we have to be lighthearted enough to know that as we let go of the traumas and the wounds and the grudges, we will finally find ourselves light enough to fully transcend the lower timelines that we are in a way where we are not taking the attacks personally. We have to charge everything to the game and the art of healing because the heaviness of the heart is what keeps us stuck in lower timelines. And the goal is to flow and ascend and essentially be able to quantum leap very easily. And to make yourself light, it's essential to go with the flow. To surrender in the face of the things that you cannot change, but to be very adamant about changing the things that you can change. The main thing that we can change, the main thing we have power over is ourselves, our habits, our reactions, our choices. Spirit is telling me that it may benefit some people who are watching this to look more into Taoism. It's spelled Taoism. So what needs to be cleared from your heart and from your mindset? Because the universe is giving us all a chance to clear and release and ascend to higher dimensions. That's always been the mission. And if you need a reading or guidance in a spiritual situation that you are in, or you need to know about any karmic cycles that are operating in your life, I'd be honored to tap in with your spirit team and guide you towards the answers that you seek. I'd also like to extend an invitation for you to join our lovely community of healers and light workers on Patreon if you're feeling called to take your spiritual journey to the next level. There will be a link for readings and the Patreon in the comments below. Peace and blessings, everybody. Selah.